brain numb baby. That's right, brain numb baby. Cerebral palsy, brain numb baby. Stay tuned as we're going to be jumping in. And what does that mean? So we're going to talk about that next. Brain numb baby. Hello, everyone, and welcome to PWD Allies podcast. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps to boost up the viewership, and it helps us with the channel. Please subscribe to the podcast version. There's lots of choices to choose from out there. And if you don't want to watch it live, you can listen to it later. If you're walking about in the community that you're in or wherever you are in Canada, or around the world, listen to the podcast. There's lots to choose from. Today, I have Alan Davies joining me from way on, not quite on the east coast of Canada, in Ontario, but from BC. I'm way out in Victoria, British Columbia, so Ontario, way out that way. Thanks for joining me, Alan. It's great to have you on the podcast.
No problem.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about brain numb baby today. Cerebral palsy.
Well, yeah. I mean, the reason why I came up with the thumbnail I did, if everybody refers to the thumbnail, I mean, we did a podcast recently when we talked about the kind of the word cloud of disabled and disability, like all the kind of the negative stigma that comes, the word choices that come with disability and disabled. And it's like, if you're disabled, you're wrecked. If you're disabled, you're weak. If you're disabled, you're what is it? A liability. All those kinds of things, right? And so in kind of to offshoot from that, people should realize that cerebral palsy, if you translate it, if you translate the words, it translates to, like, cerebral is brain, and palsy translates to numb. So combination, it translates to brain numb, which is not a very welcoming term, or like, it's not.
It has no grace to it.
Yeah, it's very stigma laden. That's why, I mean, we had that previous podcast talking about all the stigma and how word choices kind of manifest. So I kind of wanted to start there about how maybe CP has a bad rap just from that to start with.
Oh, absolutely. When you there's a young lady that's on TikTok. She's in the States that she has mild cerebral palsy, but you see her using, sometimes she can walk, sometimes she's using a walker, sometimes she's using a mobility scooter, and she can drive and everything, but she was talking about the ramifications of Trump when it comes to this anti-woke DEI, where he's removing words like disability from the vocabulary of the United States, and what a dangerous path this is going. Where, take a look at that plane that went down in Pearson Airport, and it was, and the first thing Donald Trump could do was blame the technicians in where the plane came from, and that whoever was working in the factory floor was to blame for the malfunction. No, the plane, I think they said the plane crashed because it got caught in a crosswind, which can happen to any plane, whether it's functioning or not. And the first thing he had to do was he mentioned disabled workers and technicians for being at fault, and now he's trying to.
I missed that part.
Now he's trying. Well, he's basically saying that ineffective workers or people don't know how with any real skills. I mean, that's his stick, right? Let's
Yeah.
blame anybody else,
Yeah.
make it about me
Mhm.
as much as possible. I mean, it's a flagrant tool in the toolkit of a narcissist anyway.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is to blame you for seeing a blue sky, even if there's a blue sky. Like,
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
yeah, and before we get too far, I did want to kind of lay out some, a general diagnosis of what cerebral palsy is, just so everybody kind of has this groundwork and have some stats. So basically, cerebral palsy, if you look in a medical journal, the way they describe it is it's a neurodevelopmental disorder for movement and posture. That's kind of the Cole's Notes version of it, and it's caused by damage it's from anoxia or hypoxia, which is basically when the oxygen is cut off in the brain. So it's either during development in the womb or
Or during birth is
during birth. You can get so in my case, I'm not sure exactly what happened in my case. I think it was kind of both happened actually. So I had some oxygen cut off during development in the womb, and also as well during delivery.
For me, it was delivery. My mom said,
Yeah.
according to the testing and all the checkups and everything was going fine and well. Um, Me having cerebral palsy was a shock to them because and I was quite small. I ended
Mm-hmm.
up spending. I think I didn't. I don't think I came home till I was 3 months old.
Yeah,
From the hospital.
that was me too. I stayed in a, what do you call it?
Intensive.
One of those little chambers,
Yeah.
hyper,
Let me out of
whatever.
this, Rocky. I'm not going
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so basically, it's cerebral palsy controls your movement, coordination, or I should say, it affects your movement, coordination, muscle tone, posture, and if you wanted to get more specific, you get things like neuromotor abnormalities, fatigue and weakness, numbness, reduced function, balance. And that's your cerebellum in your head that controls
Yeah.
your balance, which is a big
Mhm.
thing. Like now that as soon as I turned 50, my cerebellum, it was just like it shut off in my head. I can't balance it to save my life anymore. The third thing is respiratory function. You can get scoliosis and curvature of the spine is pretty common.
Mhm.
Perceptual abnormalities, visual impairments, that affects about 25 to 40% of everybody with CP. Like when I was born cross-eyed. They had to
Yep. They
do an operation to fix my eyes.
It's a cosmetic. I only had my left eye, which had to get cosmetically straightened.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
my it's I guess maybe it's why I'm a decent photographer, but my right
yeah.
eye is actually 20. I'm actually perfect in my right eye. It's
Oh
my
wow.
left eye, and the funny part is when I wear sunglasses or glasses, it looks like my left eye is looking out the right lens. So it's a little tricky. It's kind of more of a support for the. It's like a turbo boost
Yeah,
for the right eye, but beyond that, it's really not.
yeah.
Well, that's
I've always had a
that's
little
like
bit.
that's like for me is
Yeah,
I when I was a little youngster, they had to do an eye surgery too, and they moved to the pupils over so they could try to keep them center so that I would see center vision. Because that mine, the same thing, Neil. They it was like almost like cross-eyed, where I was actually seeing double at times, and I'd walk in the walls and thinking that was the door. I vaguely remember these things, but my balance was off for quite a while, and they were trying to teach me how. I remember there was nurses and doctors. I don't remember, who
hmm
all they were, but they were all
I
teaching me how to walk.
I attribute many face plants to the fact that the brain sent the memo out to the foot department, and the foot department didn't get the facts in time.
Yeah, no, I always tell, I've always told little kids that the best way to describe what cerebral palsy is, it's a bit like the game of broken telephone, where that game where you all would sit in a circle and the first person would send the message, you whisper in the ear, and it would be something like, Brent has bought like 12 blueberry muffins to share with the class, or something like that, and then you get all the way down to the end of the line and it would be completely different. Because keep getting whispered around the circle, and so the same thing is like the brain sends signals, and the signals get disrupted. So by the time it gets to your legs or whatever is affected, there's a disconnect there, and we talk sometimes about muscles having memory. You have muscle memory, right? Yeah. Well, if your muscles aren't getting the communication from the brain properly, kind of the muscles start losing that memory too, and so that's why you get the loss of function, right?
Yeah, or by the time it ends the line, and then we'll jump over to Alan. By the time it ends the line, it's Brent was able to change PWD policy regulations because the government across Canada didn't bother to do it. No,
I find it so interesting because, for the most part, I feel like I dodged the bullet when it came to CP. Like the doctor said, they told my parents, you should get as much involvement and activities you can with him. By the time he's 10, he's going to be gone. And that was just like, they were like, he's probably going to survive till 15 at the most.
Yeah, that was a common thing. That was everybody thought that everybody with CP was going to die. Yeah.
And then 15 became 20, and my dad. Yeah. And that's when my parents started relaxing. When I hit 20, they were like, "Well, he got to live to 90."
Yeah.
Well, I was riding dirt bikes. Half my teachers were like, "This guy's faking having any kind of disability."
Yeah.
Like, I was on the wrestling team in high school. I did that more so I wouldn't get stuck in lockers. But
I hear you on that one.
But like, nobody bothered being grade 9 and 10. They also knew that I had a Brazilian jiu-jitsu background from grade 8, so I was kind of a tough kid. And because I was in the cadet corps and stuff in high school, that was, if you were a sergeant by the time you were grade 9, you were doing okay. I mean, you would never tell anybody going into the armed services that you were in the cadets, but being like even an acting sergeant at the local cadet corps was something to not boast about, but it was like the equivalent of being on the football team. You didn't really get messed with, especially if you had friends in the same. If you had friends in the same within a year of each other, you were kind of protected under that. Like, are you seriously messing with that guy? He's like an acting sergeant. You do not do that. So that protected me for a lot of the part, and let me get away with a lot of stuff too. Like, in grade 9, I wore my RCMP 16-hole Dr. Martens with a "God Save the Queen" Sex Pistol t-shirt, which did not go down well with the staff. But the kids loved it.
Well, you touched on something just very briefly there, Alan, and that's that CP really runs the gamut on severity. Like we've kind of gone through a little bit of the list there, but there's some things that are
pure nonverbal.
Really, you get pure nonverbal, or you can get really bad stuttering problem. I mean, I stutter a little bit. I've always had a little bit of problem with stuttering sometimes. But slurred speech or being completely nonverbal is a thing like that. That can affect up to like between 50 to 70% of all CP cases. So that's a big thing. Like this, this isn't very studied very much still, but according to the medical journals, like I looked at some medical journals before the show, and they're saying that memory loss in aging is potentially a thing. Like, as you age, people with CP can experience
I haven't
memory loss.
I don't know where my keys are half the time, but I remember what my sports car sounded like when I started it. So it's really weird. It's like I'll remember an album, a Led Zeppelin album, track list, almost song for song, and then I'll walk in the kitchen and go, "Why did I come in here?"
All right.
Yeah. But one of the things I did want to touch on as we're going through this list of all like kind of what constitutes cerebral palsy, and again, a couple of things in the list that I haven't covered yet is poor coordination, high muscle tone, which means like you have like your muscles are really tight. That's a big one for me. So again, your balance is off, your movement is off. But what I was going to say, and you can also get people with CP have hearing loss that can affect maybe 15 to 25% is hearing loss. But the thing I was going to say, and again, this goes back to the stigma and why I put the thumbnail I did about the brain numb baby, getting back to the stigma, is that the motor function and the perceptual things like with for example, my eyes, I don't see, I can't perceive like straight lines very well, or I couldn't see diagonals very well, and that kind of thing. And so like in school I would have kind of slow writing, and so at the start teachers would think, well, okay, maybe Neil can't hack it, or maybe he's got like a learning disability. But really all it was my writing was slow. And also too, like I think I mentioned it one time before on the podcast a while ago, those bubble sheets, where the bubble sheet test where and it was really big in a lot of schools. I don't know about you, Ellen, but that was huge. You'd have all those aptitude tests where you'd do all those bubble sheets, and initially they thought I was literally brain dead because like my score would be 0 on those, and I'll tell you the reason why is because on all those bubble sheets, for some reason I would miss the first box or the first circle. So I would, instead of starting at 1, I would think that 1 was starting at 2. So I would color in 2 thinking I was entering 1. So all of my answers would be 1 off. And it wasn't until my mom would kind of saw this and go, well, you saw that Neil missed, he missed like the first box on all of these. Like it was very consistent. I would miss 1 on all of them. So of course all my answers were wrong. And then so my mom said, well, why don't you go back and readjust everything back to 1 and then see how Neil did. And of course then I had all the answers right, and they're like, oh wow, that's what I mean, is like, so it wasn't that I was stupid, it was that I had the eye, I had a problem with my perception that was throwing off like where I was marking the pencil, Yeah,
I hear you on that.
Math was my worst subject, anything math related. And they would give you that when you had to write the test and you had to draw in a circle whether 87 was the answer, or 55 or 62 or 22, and it would give you the question like a multiple choice, and all the kids did the same test. And you just had to color in that color and get as many of the answers done in 60 minutes. I didn't have so much of those I didn't do so bad in adding. It was when I got into the division and the not the division, what do they call it? It's there's a line over and you have to answer the
like fractions.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
But it's funny because
I know.
I did this big assessment for DSO to get my passport funding and stuff. And you have to go through this huge, I don't think I've been tested that heavy since I was in grade 8. Like this was a huge assessment with a certified psychologist and to the staff at Bethesda, which is a nonprofit organization of people with disabilities and stuff. So it was like a 2.5 hour, and I had to put plastic pieces of puzzle, and some of them were red and some of them were white, and I had to make the same pattern with the blocks as I did what was on the paper, and they were like, okay, well they came back 16 weeks later with the assessment, and we sat down again, and they went through what the assessment meant, and so apparently I'm on the autism spectrum. I scored very low in mathematical related. Like I said, I hope you're not going to ask me what time the train came in at 55 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I
used to hate those
it took.
Yeah.
My answer's gonna. I said my answer's gonna be the same. I don't care.
That's a good one.
I don't care.
My answer would be, what are they serving on the train? What kind of food? What kind of food can I get on the train?
Dirty banana splits on this. So when they went over the assessment and said, yes, you're definitely going to get your DSO and your assessment, you're definitely qualified. So apparently, not only did I have to deal with the disability factor of any intellectual as far as it through high school, but I had to deal with being undiagnosed on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, and back then, this whole DEI thing didn't come into play. It was one size fits all, and if you couldn't keep up in the regular classroom, they'd stick you in a classroom at the back of the in the back of the library, and there would be like 8 of you around an octagon table, and that was it. The only thing that was really cool was in grade 8, we were all in the same classroom. We did math. The teachers would just come in and teach in that classroom. We didn't go to other classrooms, but our classroom was the one that ran the school cafeteria. So we got to go on the cool trips. Like we got to go to the amusement park and ride go-karts, and because we were allowed to have pizza parties in our room and stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's not common. Like it's just the fact that we ran the cafeteria. We had to work a shift in the cafeteria during lunch once a week. Everybody got a turn to do it.
I remember in elementary school, like if anybody had a birthday, like it was like any excuse to have somebody bring a cake, and it's like, yeah, let's do it. But one question I was going to ask the both of you is, and I just want to get your feedback from both of you, is like we had Tamara Taggart on recently, and she was saying how hard it is to advocate. Sometimes, like, you know, as a parent, she says, as a parent of somebody with a disability, it's kind of hard to advocate. She says she gets pushed back a lot for things that she says. But I was going to say, like, for me growing up, I was lucky in the sense that I had, like, you know, a mom who was a nurse, so that when a doctor said, you know, you're don't expect anything from your son, my mom would push back and say, I don't believe that. And she would push back because she had the medical knowledge. So she would push back and say, I don't really believe that. But I just wanted to get your opinion, both of you, on what your experience was. Because I think that's a big problem for a lot of people is that they just trusted, like, maybe a lot of parents just trust the medical opinion, like, full stop, without pushing back. And I just want to see if that happened with you, or if
sure.
You go
first, Ellen. Yeah.
Oh, I go first. Okay. Well, unfortunately for the school, or fortunately for the school, I don't know, school board, my parents were both college professors at the community college. My dad was a chairman of the board, and then became a vice president after that. He became a hospitality director. So he wore several different hats through the years he was at the college. And my mom was an English teacher as well as a what do they call seamstress. So she had a master's degree. So the 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 elementary school was definitely pushed back. I had a lady that I had her three times in my elementary grade between grade 1 and grade 6, and she was one of these the kind of teacher you'd find in this old farms small town schoolhouse type, very stern, very not a very nice person.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually, when my parents announced that they were taking me across Europe in 1977, when I was in grade 1, and I would be doing correspondence, she made up the biggest fuss. She called a school meeting. She had children's and aid involved. She wanted me removed from my parents. She thought I should be in an institute. Oh my God, she was a horrible woman. My dad said, "It must be horrible for you to be such a closed-minded individual." We are we are licensed teachers, and of course, she was definitely one of those Karen types, very religious, thought that my parents were being hippies basically. And my dad's like, "I'm on sabbatical to recruit information to get information for curriculum by
Mm-hmm.
going to cathedrals and to my son will see more of, of the Western world and the Eastern world in 1 year than he will in 10 years of most of your students."
Mm-hmm.
So basically, my dad said, "Back the off."
Mm-hmm.
Like, and anytime I had a teacher and I was getting kind of bullied by the teacher, that did not go down well too, because once my parents caught on I was being unfairly treated in the school. Oh my God, someone at the school board got a phone call or two.
Mm-hmm.
That did not go down well for them.
Mm-hmm.
So the schools, both the schools, through grade 1 right all the way up to grade 11 when we went sailing for a trip. And I did my grade 11 and my grade 1 by correspondence, and grade. It both improved my grade average. I was learning at a grade higher than I was at school. So I was a lot of my when I was 18 doing my school correspondence in 89, I was doing general where at the high school I was doing modified basic. And I was so bored because most of the material I could get a solid A plus through.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time doing general level, I was actually being challenged. So my grades were about a B plus. So academically, as long as I had help with like things like essays and stuff, I was doing less schoolwork and getting further ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I didn't do grade 12 is I went for mature student status at the college, and they had just started it was the same idea as they had in grade 8 where everybody's in one classroom. It was a new pilot program,
Right.
and it was for mature students over the age of 20
Mm-hmm.
that hadn't gone to high school or had dropped out at some point, and you were still doing the same. You were still doing the same courses with the same credits as the rest of the college, but you were doing it in an environment that seemed more easier. Like they took away some of the barriers of
Mm-hmm.
being alone in college for the first year or so.
Yeah.
I was still doing English 100. I was still doing Math 100. I was still doing Psych 100. And it was really handy because after that, I went into my 2 year college program
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to do a lot more journalistic electives because my hope was to go into radio, TV broadcasting.
Okay.
So I was trying to nail all my electives that I would have had to take in the second year
Mm-hmm.
out of the way by the time I was finished the first. So when it came to the second year, before I went into the actual program, right? So I would do 2 years of general, and then I would go to radio TV. So I was ahead of the game in a lot of ways because I was getting some of my journalistic programs done, courses done, sociology done, Psych 100 gone in the can, done.
Yeah.
So
What about you, Brent? How
Yeah.
was your
Yeah.
experience?
So, growing up, with a single mother, brought myself and my brother. My dad left when I was just a little munchkin, should we say. I was the shortest in the class, so of course, like I could hide behind people and they wouldn't even know that I'm there, right? So I was quite shy. I think it was more I was shy because I felt that my voice didn't need to be heard out there, and um, and I kind of over time I became to realize that yes, my voice needed to be heard, and but I was scared. I was scared that if I speak up, that I was going to be silenced out. Why? Because like growing up, I had a representative from the CNIB who would actually come to my school. She would actually come to my home too, and to help me with some classwork that I would have to take, home. I mean, every kid would have to go home with schoolwork, right? You got, your homework to do. Well, she would every so often. I mean, not too often, because I mean, she did it on her own time, which I thought that was so awesome, right? My mom would actually make a lunch for her, or maybe an early dinner. Like sometimes she'd come there for dinner, and my mom would actually say, "Well, this is what we're having," and oh, perfect. And so she would sit down with me after dinner, and she says, "Well, I've only got like an hour and a half, Brent, and then I have to go home, and but I'll see you tomorrow in class." And okay, so I thought that was pretty cool. So I had that extra perk, which was very helpful for me. But at the same time, I still felt very shy, very kind of enclosed in myself.
Well,
Very
how was your mom though? How was your
my,
mom?
my mom, she was brought up to be a very very like Ellen mentioned, like when you mentioned the stern. My mom was a very stern lady, who she had grown up into the Great Depression around her mother, and she said she was only just a little girl at times, but she remembered it. And so she grew up through the World War II. My mom helped out doing medical stuff, at tents and stuff, and she said, things were tough, and so she helped me along my pathway of being from a child, of learning who I was, and always just picking myself up if I fell down.
Yeah.
Myself up.
So I was gonna say, was she kind of like the school of hard knocks, like
Oh yeah,
sink or swim? Like she just kind of throw you out in the deep end and like you figured out, Brent, kind of thing, or what?
Well,
I actually had a swimming instructor literally do that to me. First day threw me.
yeah.
My dad, there was this glass window between the swimming pool and the waiting area. So the parents could watch their kids doing, and I was like, I don't want to go in a pool. I was like 6 or something, and the high school student literally picked me up and threw me in the diving area. My dad nearly lost his marbles. I was like, and then it was like once I learned how to tread water, I was fine.
Yeah.
I was like, once I knew I wasn't going to sink to the bottom, you know.
So what she did was she really kind of coached me along, and helped me explore of who I was going forward, of making me understand that if you make little falls, that it's okay to fall and pick yourself up. And just being there, of if I had trouble with other students in the class, that she would be there. She'd phone up the school and saying like, okay, we got to have a meeting. I'd get locked in my locker. I mean, I was so short. I mean, hey, they just throw me in the locker and to lock the door, and put the lock on. I mean, it was petrifying for me.
Yeah.
Like, thank gosh there was holes in the locker. You could breathe. But I mean, I was right across from the office, so my locker was So every time they would go in and out, hey, can you hear me? People looking around, hey, where's that coming from? So I mean, that was in grade 8. After that, it was fine. But basically, it was scary, right?
Kids are jerks at
Yeah.
grade
So
8.
my mom she had heard about it, and she really put her foot down. And it made me really appreciate her advocacy at the time of standing up for who I was. And my mom said that, always advocate for yourself, but your pupils around you who maybe are going through the same thing, and saying, it's not okay, Brent, it's not okay, you need to speak up. And so getting that inner voice of saying, and triggering off that inner voice that I already had, but saying it's okay to say if you see something wrong, call it out. And so going through school, like I was going through some regular classes, but there was also modified classes that I had to go through, because it was the learning curve, with hand and eye coordination of being able to be fast enough writing. My writing skills were very, very slow. So that's why they taught me in elementary to touch type. And so I learned that skill way back then, and I carried it forward doing high school, and it really helped me. But again, being put into a separate class, it didn't help me academically. Like it kind of pushed me back a bit, and like when I was in there, and I remember having tears coming down my face for a bit, and here and there, because I just wanted to be included in the class, and I felt that, well, again, here I go again. Why am I being isolated? And they said, wow, this is a great idea. But again, it's like we're going through math. Well, math, I had a challenge. I remember doing summer school in grade 10. Like my math, I just could not seem to grasp.
Did it have Mark Harmon there?
Oh yeah.
Mark Harmon, Summer School. Who remembers that movie?
Well, I remember going to the high school though, and doing my classes with the teacher's assistant, and it did really well, because it actually, I was doing the regular math, but it actually, with that help, it was like a slower pace, but to actually understand the concept of multiplying fractions and dividing this and that, and I just didn't seem to get that. She said there might be a diagnosis in there somewhere, Brent, that maybe the doctors didn't pick up on when you were younger. I go, I don't know. I'm just having trouble with this. But anyway, fast forward to college. Like I got through, the high school, of course, the regular math. But then in grade 11, they said, okay, I think math is going to be a problem for you, Brent. But you need to have what do they call it? They're like transferable credits when you're in grade 11 and 12 to go to college. So yeah, like an elective. So I had to have math, or I could take accounting. So I had a choice. They said, so it's either one or the other. If you take math, you're already having trouble. You did summer school. And if you fail again, you're going to have to redo this again. So you're going to be more prolonged and not keeping up with your classmates going forward. Because the choice is that if I wanted to do that either in summer school or do that at the beginning of, like, say, September, I would be back a year. I'm like, no, I don't want that. So I did accounting, and I did really good. I just needed to have stuff blowing up. But so anyway,
and college is a lot more flexible. Like they don't care if you're not if you have to use a calculator.
Well, I found that when I went to college, because I was ahead of the time, especially for typing. I got exempted out of typing, so I could use that as part of my other course curriculum that I had to go through modules and go in and study on those. And then, of course, typing was A+, right? I mean, I was like hands down. I mean, I could do it blindfolded. I mean, no problem, right? But I didn't have the teacher's assistant in college, right? I had a homeroom that I could go to from one of my courses that I went to, which helped me accelerate for who I am now and believe in myself. And I really echo that to any student who has a disability if they haven't taken that course.
I have to thank my dad, because, I mean, before I even got to college, he was the reason that the college had a disability department. Specifically. So things like note-taking and having tutors and all that kind of stuff, accommodated longer test times, was all because my dad was one. I don't think he was the only one, but he was one of the people that made sure that the community college had accommodations for people with disabilities because the high school certainly didn't.
Yeah, because like when I was in high school, I had a high school that was close by. I mean, when I say close by, it was only like 2 miles away from where I lived. But here's the kicker. I wouldn't get the actual assistance that I needed at that school. Because there was other students in another high school that actually had hearing impairment, visual impairment, and there was another student who had both hearing impairment and visual impairment. So the teacher's assistant only had a contract with one school because the school board wouldn't pay for that teacher assistant to be at the another school. Right. So my mom had to make the ultimate decision of saying, well, Brent, what do you want? And I really, I mean, I look back at it and I was so happy for her, putting me first, of saying what works good for you, Brent, rather than I can tell you that, yeah, maybe you should go to that school because you're going to get the help. I said, I want to be at the other school because my friends are all at the school and that's everybody that I knew. And so for me, I felt lost because having to go to a different school, and only one of my friends who was going to that school because he was in the boundary. They have a boundary area cut off for what school that you can actually legally go to versus the other one. Me, they made 100%.
I actually liked that I switched. One of the reasons my switch from one elementary school to another was actually beneficial was because the second school, which used to be the formal small town high school that had been turned, because we ended up having a problem where there weren't enough elementary schools for the kids in Fonthill because everybody was buying up houses in Fonthill. It was the new place to live. You didn't want to live in Old Welland. Everybody that had a little bit of extra money were buying these houses and subdivisions were being built and all this stuff. So we had this huge overflow where we ended up with 2 elementary schools and Crossley, which is the big high school. It's huge.
Well, there was the contract that the assistant had, and it was up for renewal. And unfortunately, the teacher's assistant was going to have to relocate to a completely different school. And so I had to make a decision. Like, I was getting picked on at the time, and I was just having a hard time going through there. And so I was on the verge of actually just leaving the school altogether. And they said, if you leave the school, you're not going to have the assistance, Brent. Like, you will not get the assistance. And if you don't academically succeed, then you're going to have issues going forward. And so when I had got an assessment done, educational assessment done when I was in I was in elementary school, saying, well, academically, Brent probably won't be able to go to college because he's just not going to be fast enough. They called it my motor skills weren't fast enough, Neil. Yeah, I mean, really? And I proved them wrong. I thought that. My mom goes, well, you know what you can do and what you can't do, Brent. Yeah. Don't listen to the CNIB. I had a different rep at the time, and I didn't like her very much, because she said, well, academically, his motor skills are not going to be fast enough. I still remember the old hay bag.
Yeah, but let's, because we've got about maybe 15 minutes left in the show. So, and I just wanted to maybe transition now, leave the school stuff behind now, and transition into carrying our disabilities forward to adulthood, and kind of what is the difference that we also like. I know this show is about CP, so I want to turn it back to Ellen for a second. Like, as an adult now, Ellen, what do you see as the biggest challenges with your disability as an adult versus when you were a kid?
Employment and the stigma of the not my backyard, not in my restaurant, not in my employment. I mean, I got lucky. Swiss Chalet is one of those companies that is very accommodating to people with disabilities. They want to wear the hat, the good employer hat, as much as possible. It's part of their business philosophy. Um, Montana's not so much, although they're under the same Kelsey's, Montana's, Harvey's, they're all under the same umbrella. But it seems that Swiss Chalet is the more ethical, accommodating one. But generally, it's like it's tough because I mean we hear people like Doug Ford going, "No, the best thing you can do for a disabled person is give them a job." But what he's missing is a huge segment of employers going, "Nah, I don't want it."
Yeah.
That means I gotta dedicate another 10 hours a month to holding this guy's hand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if he doesn't have to hold that person's hand,
Right.
the employer is like, that's my bottom line. I'm like, yeah. So why would I hire him when I can hire some guy off the street from, you know, who just who's going to be invisible and not give me it. So the employment barrier, and the other thing that I think is so frustrating is if you're a disabled person and you happen to be intellectually able to articulate, like myself and you, Neil, and Brent, you fall into this loophole of, oh, you're just gaming the system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're
So
faking.
It's vicious,
Faker.
You're faking.
Yeah.
You're faking it. You're the reason I'm paying so much taxes.
Yeah.
Bad. Like I've been in, and I really start. It really turns me off these community groups on social media because it turns into a nest of vipers. You get these keyboard warriors, you know, and they come in with the whole non-DEI, non-woke agenda, and the moment you like I posted anonymous or maybe it wasn't anonymous. I said, I'm new to Belleville. I'm just trying to find my way around. If anybody's heard of any restaurants that might be hiring, please drop me a line. I'm on disability, but I really want to make sure that I'm working. And some of the comments were, I won't even repeat them. They were so nasty. It felt like 1985 all over again.
Right.
Stay in your lane. Don't waste employers' times. You know, like, and you get all these nasty people going, disabled people are crooks. There's, like, I was just like, I almost left the group because it was. So I have to deal a lot with this too. And when I advocate on any platform, you just get those keyboard warriors coming out and they just got something to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if you're like, you're taking account for yourself and you're saying that I'm disabled, but I want a part-time job. So I'm giving back to society, and then I'm not leeching off a system. And you get these guys go, well, if you don't want to leech off a system, give your disability benefit up and be a worker like most of us. Like, some of the,
crazy.
You're just going.
Yeah.
Have fun, conservative.
Well, that's exactly it, Alan. I mean, I've heard so many different stories of our comments. People would say, well, if you just really put your mind to it, you can get over your disability, or you know what, like suck it down. You know, pardon my language. It's like suck it up, buttercup. Like, I mean, we all become disabled, but I'm still working. Well, you might be able to working, but you're doing what you can do, but not everybody can do what you do. And
we always say this, right? I mean, you know, like I worked a lot when I was younger, and so did you. But unfortunately, when you have a significant lifelong disability, like in your case, your blindness, or in my case, my cerebral palsy, and Ellen as well. I mean, it's a moving target. It's a moving target. I mean, things change. Like
they do.
For me, I can tell you, like I could see when I turn 49, 50, the wheels start to fall off. the wheels start to fall off on your body, and it's like, holy shit. It's a huge wake-up call. It's a huge wake-up call. But it's just like you can see the wheels falling off. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially like when I was going through college, I was going through like testing. I had a doctor who was testing me, and I was going through a course at the time. So this was cool, and then VRS paid for it and they made arrangements. And I was going through this testing. It's kind of what you were describing, Ellen, about putting blocks together, this and that. And then they got me to read passages and like novels. There was one that was so interesting, and I said, "Hey, I remember reading that when I was a kid." Yeah, so you'll probably kind of focus right on it and really just dive into it. And I listened to the audio. They said, "We want you to listen to the audio version, Brent."
Oh, I love audiobooks.
And I went, "Oh, okay." I said, "Okay, cool." They're like, "This way you can actually digest the information even probably faster than reading it, because they realize that reading it is going to take me a lot longer." So I'm listening, and so they want me to take notes down from what I read. I was having difficulty doing that. But they gave me another one, which I excelled in it. So what they determined out of the whole test,
one thing I did is I was allowed to record the teacher doing a lecture if he was lecturing.
Yeah.
And what I would do was I had a little dictaphone, and back then they were the little cassettes. There was no digital version. Yeah, and the ones that were available were very big and very expensive. If you want, now they're all digital. Like now they're kind of like a hybrid between a USB drive and a dictaphone, right? So you just charge them, and then you can pull files off of them, WAV files. Yeah. So what I would do is I would record the teacher, and then I'd play back his tape on my stereo with my headphones on. And my voice wasn't that great, but I would use this little dictaphone thing. I'd make a copy of it, and then I would hand the cassette to him, so he knew that I was taking the information he was teaching in his class.
Mm-hmm. It was very helpful, because you could use that.
It was funny. It's funny you say that, because in my case, like I thought recording the like when I was in college, university, I brought a little mini recorder too, and I thought it'd be handy to record the lectures. Yeah, thank you. And but then I realized, that's a lot of extra work, where I have to sit through the lecture a whole second time. Thinking to myself, like, I don't have the time to sit through a whole hour lecture twice. I don't have the time to do that. So I just stopped doing that, and I just got better at taking shorter and shorter notes that had more detail.
Well,
like I had trigger detail, but not like less. I'd had to write less, but I got just more efficient in writing my notes. Yeah.
In college, I had a note taker, but I still recorded my classes because sometimes the note taker wouldn't show up.
Right.
So I had the audio, and like I said, I knew my handwriting wasn't legible, so I could either type out my notes, because I could stop the recorder, make some notes, hit play again, listen for a bit, hit pause, take some notes, and I had a little word processor, or then I got a little tablet type thing. But,
do you remember the word star? You remember the word star? You had a whole spreadsheet you put on your wall. It was like literally this big.
I know.
It was like all these like control keys to turn like on and off things, and to get back into certain screens.
And that's something that when I was going through.
I actually left the CNIB because I was part of the CNIB, but I realized that at age 16, I wanted to take my driver's license. So they told me if I wanted my driver's license, I couldn't be part of the CNIB. So I stopped using the CNIB when I was 16 or 17.
And I mean, that's part of the process. Like when I remember, Neil, like you had just mentioned about that, all these this big board. And I mean, that was part of the testing that I went through and then of course, I mean, when I was going through the college, when I, of course, just added, like, as you mentioned, I mean, and I talk about this all the time on the podcast, as we get older or as life goes on, I mean, you get more disabilities or other diagnoses that weren't or undiagnosed when you first were, I mean, born as it with a disability, right? And for me, it was more of I already knew it was there, but been told in person, black and white, that hey, now you have a learning disability, Brent, and being by a doctor. I mean, and I had to present that to the class. They're like, so what did you learn, Brent? I mean, well, this is what they're like, and they're like, yeah, that's just part of life. I mean, that's just another, curve. And, and for me, like I was born premature. Like I was born sooner than I was supposed to be.
Yeah, all three of us were then.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of developmental other things.
I wasn't premature, but I was too small, and because they'd realized that I had CP, they thought it was a lot more severe. And then I had some breathing issues where I needed oxygen. So that's why I was there. But I wasn't actually, I was born on the day they planned me to be born on. But I had to stay. I had to stay in the hospital because I wasn't strong enough to come home yet.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be born until almost the end of October, almost.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I think I was 2 months preemie, actually 2 months.
Yeah, I was. They estimated October 30th, but they said it would, or the first week of November. So yeah, like I was born a lot sooner. And it's just my life. I don't know anything different. If someone were to say, yeah, we've got a cure for you, I'd be like, I'd be lost, because I'd be like, okay, well, I would continue life on where I am now, right?
Well, we're at the end of the show now, Brent, and actually how you just ended there is actually probably a good spot to end, because you just said, that's your life and you have to live it. And all three of us here are kind of a living testimony to that, right? You
absolutely.
You deal with the cards you're dealt with, and like I said, it's a moving target. Like every year, every week, every day is a moving target, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches a little bit.
We just go with it. That's just how
I call it navigating unknown territory, because
that's what I call it.
You don't have a roadmap. I mean, my friend Jordan was having a really rough time a while ago, being a single mom, and I said, "There's no manual, sweetie. Nope. There's no manual to this." And being disabled is the same thing. Like, there's no manual. There's no how to operate your disability. Model 45556. There's no.
Well, before we end the show, Alan,
there's no Bluetooth app either.
Well, the part that really gets me is, I run against people from time to time, not very often now, but just every so often, isolated. Someone says, "Oh wow, what is it like to have a disability like that? I mean, it must be really hard on you." I go, "What? What are you talking about?" I go, wow. I said, "Man, I said, yeah, that is such an ableist comment." And then I walk away. I said,
the biggest takeaway is don't grow up. Don't grow up here, and don't grow up here, because that's when you get old. That's when you think, I'm not going to get on a bike again, or I'm not going to get behind the wheel of a car again, or I'm not going to go on a train ride across the country again, or jump on a plane. It's a Ponzi scheme. And when you're disabled, you appreciate the fact that growing up was a complete scam. I'm not saying don't be responsible, and don't go do your banking, and don't go do adulting stuff like grocery shopping, but don't grow up. It's a complete scam. It's an act of compliance.
Well, one thing I will say about having a disability, and I think I've said this a few times, is kind of the hidden blessing of having a disability is that you do. I think, for me personally, I don't know about the rest of you, but for me personally, like, you end up appreciating what you do have when you don't have, when you can't do certain things, and when you don't have certain functions or abilities, like my legs don't work perfect, you really do appreciate the things you do have, and you want to hold on to the things that you do have. So, for example, like, I never wanted to like smoke cigarettes. I mean, of course, I was like anybody else. Like I used to drink a little bit, but I don't really drink anymore because it's hard on my gut, so I don't do it anymore. It's a gut thing, but you know what I mean. Like I looked after myself. I didn't do drugs. I didn't do cigarettes because I wanted to look after the health that I had. You know, so I appreciated what I had, and so you look after it like your body's a temple kind of thing. So that's how I kind of viewed my body. It's like I better respect it. I better respect it. Right?
My body was an escape room.
Oh.
Yeah, one thing I've learned.
I'm afraid I was a little rough. I was a little rough on it. I did go dirt biking, and I'm telling you,
well,
if I had $10,000 right now, I would probably buy myself a classic Triumph motorcycle and get my M2 back.
No,
I don't think I would.
I did some crazy stuff when I was a kid. Like I tried everything. I did snow skiing, where they had one person beside. They called it tandem skiing with a bamboo pole, and I did water skiing, and I did a whole bunch of really crazy things. What's the other one? Sledge hockey. Like anything I can try, I'll do it. But what I'm saying is just like really bad habit things. I just said I'm not going to do that because that's just going to torpedo my health like way worse than it already is. I'm not going to do that. But we should punch out, Brent.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I want to thank everyone, including our guest today, Alan Davies, for tuning in and coming on to the show. Definitely, please like, subscribe, and share the content as usual. Always a great pleasure having Alan joining on the show and talking about lived experience, what you're going through with your cerebral palsy, and anyone else who wants to come on to the show and talk about their lived experience, a person with a disability, or as an ally to a person with a disability, definitely reach out to us. Anyone can become disabled in their life. Either you're born with a disability, you're going to acquire more disabilities in life. If you are, fortunate that you are not on the social safety net through the provinces who have a disability designation, great, right? I mean, that you're taken care of. But when you're not, please don't look down. When you're on social media, if you're seeing somebody that needs help, please, reach out and actually give them a hand if you're able to do so. I'm not telling people what they should and should not do, but if you're in that situation where you are now disabled, you're now saying, well, I will never become disabled, right? Well, then you become disabled. Now you'll say, oh, wow, I didn't know what these people go through. There are so many people that are hurting and suffering these days. And I know that society has, the way our economies are going, it's not good. I'm being optimistic that things will get better. But in the meantime, we need to, I'm not a politician, but as they always say, we need to look out for our brothers and sisters, everybody, right? I mean, Team Canada, right?
I'm not a politician, but I play one on TV.
But I play one on TV. Yes, Minister responsible. Yeah. yeah. Anyone want to tune back on that episode?
That was fun. That was a fun one. I love it.
But anyway, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. For sure. Yeah. Have a great day.
Cheers, everyone.